Hello and welcome to this week's Steam Shame Sundays. How you doing this evening, Jonathan?
I am doing well, Matt. I am excited for this game. It's one of those games that hovers on the edges of being known, but then everyone kind of just passed by it. It's got a good message to it or an interesting message to it, and it got a little bit of buzz, and then it just faded from everyone's memory, which is kind of the perfect type of game that you look for on Steam.
Yeah, that's actually a really great way of describing it. It's like I think a lot of people are aware of this game and it got generally positive buzz, but I also think that it got overlooked by a lot of people. Maybe not a lot of our friends because of, the types of people that we associate with, but overall I think you're right. This definitely is the perfect example of an overlooked game, exactly what we're trying to highlight here on the show.
Yeah, for every crappy puzzle game, no offense to which if that show never got broadcast, it's better for our listeners. There is, a cool indie game that you would have probably never picked up or knew anything about. I think this game it's kind of like the monster's representative of, this guy's alcoholic father. You depend on him, but he's also really scary too. And then it's set in the favelas, the slums of Brazil, so it's pretty interesting. The only question with games like this is, can they actually work as a game? You know what I'm saying?
It certainly qualifies as an art piece even just from that description, but is the gameplay going to be fun enough to warrant calling it a game?
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine going to a fancy museum in a big metropolitan city like New York and seeing this game, on display in one of the exhibits. But is it something I'd actually play? Is another question entirely.
Okay, well, let's check it out. I mean, anticipation is high for me. This one has actually been on my list for a while, and I'm
Can we see
excited
the
that we can
Metacritic?
play it.
I hate to be that guy, but
Let's see. 70 out of 100. I would have expected higher, just given the buzz that I picked up on when this game was popular.
so to me that suggests really interesting concept and idea, not very, but slightly flawed execution.
Yeah. And it's Papo and Yo, I just noticed. I've been referring to it as Papa, but it's P-A-P-O. Interesting.
Oh, that must be Portuguese.
Well, let's hop into it, okay?
Let's do it, yeah.
Papo and Yo. Here we go.
Let's do it.
Start new game. Oh, we got some reverse silhouette frogs floating around here.
I'm sure the frogs are part of this metaphor in some way.
Oh, so they hit this right on the
Yeah, so
right
they're
on
not
the
being
nose.
subtle about this.
I'm a little surprised by the production values.
Yeah.
It's rare to see an indie game with, this level of 3D models and lighting and
It's
animations.
like a solid Unity, yeah, I don't know if it's Unity or Unreal, but 3D graphics, pretty decent.
Okay.
So he's kind of escaping into his imagination.
Yeah, into a dream world. Which is actually quite similar to the real world. Did this come out before or after Inception?
I don't know. It's funny that his dream world is also the slums.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to be fall damage, which is good for me. Hello, friend. Oh, now they're just walls. This one's lit
So I
up.
guess
Then.
other people are escaping to this. It's kind of the collective unconscious.
Alright. It's kind of tactile. You hold the mouse button and drag the mouse back to move it.
Yeah. That feels like a gestural control that would be perfect for a touch device.
Yeah.
Right,
No,
so we've got some
no
environment.
HUD whatsoever. That's interesting.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah.
Yeah, very subtle environment noises. You're right, but very empty. I guess that's because it's a dream world, right?
Well, if this is one of those things where is it because it's a dream world or is it because it's really memory hungry to have a lot of NPCs on screen at the same time?
I'm not actually sure where I'm going right now. Over here, but how
So
do I get
this
there?
is, perhaps I think you should go towards those gears, in my humble opinion. But where a minimal HUD can actually, you have to have such strong level design.
I'm a hint box, and I'm here to help.
Cool.
There are tutorial boxes too. This is kind of clever. Oh, I can set it down if I like.
But why would you? Why wouldn't you run around the whole game in that?
Okay. So is this gonna be a puzzle platformer?
I think it is. I'm already struck by how kind of minimal it is. It's like it's a question of whether the minimalness, like just the lack of ambient music or NPCs, is a strength or a weakness.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is
Because
slow
they
paced.
haven't made the world look dreamlike in such a way that justifies the lack of NPCs. It's like a rather realistic aesthetic.
That's a good point. But sometimes doing that and then turning it on its head a few beats later could be very powerful.
Right, yeah, because they know that they have a sort of a limited supply of patience from the user or player.
It's an interesting enough world. It's kind of cool. Like, I'm intrigued by
Well,
what's happening, but it is
it's really
confusing with the
interesting
absence.
because I could say I've never seen this setting in a video game, but Max Payne 3 is
Yeah.
actually really like heavily features this environment as well, and they both came out around the same time. I wonder if they're like location scouts right into each other. Although I think this person's probably a native.
Yeah. It's not easy to get back up if you've fallen.
So it's doing the classic Legend of Zelda thing. I'm not sure if you played any of the modern 3D Legend of Zeldas recently, but they like show you where you're meant to go to. They'll like the camera will pan to a switch or something, and then exit just like it's doing now, and then pan back to you, and it's like, okay, well the assumption, the assignment is get to that switch and then get to that exit.
Yep. Also play with the frogs along the way. Oh, I can hold on to a frog. Hello, frog.
I'm sure that will be relevant when the monster shows up.
Oh, interesting. Alright, but I am trying to get up there. Oh, maybe I need to use the frogs to get up there. Nothing is a coincidence, right? Games like this sometimes benefit from using tricks to guide your eye as to how you should advance through the level. Like maybe the path up has a bright light or has a flag near it that is flapping in the wind or something.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying with like you better be making up for the lack of a HUD somehow.
Did I kill him?
You're a frog murderer.
A furderer.
Yes, I think that's what it's called.
Alright, where am I going here? Do you have any ideas?
See, this is so you got to get to the gear. Is the ladder
I
where
guess
you
there's a
came
ladder.
from?
It is, but there's another way up here. So that
Got
was
it.
just a little frog detour. Oh, but it did trigger the cutscene as well. Oh, hello.
I mean, maybe I am I am definitely highly opinionated, but in my not so humble opinion, the first 30 minutes of the game, it really got to hook you.
Yeah, I agree.
There's so many things vying for your attention. Like, I will say it, even though I hate the reality of it, but like, if you're gonna spend 90% of your production budget on the first 30 minutes of the game, it may not be the worst idea. Just in terms of eyes seeing it. Of course, you don't want a game that gets really disappointing after a while, but...
Now, I love games that have high-octane action sequences at the start, like those big-budget, EA games, etc. But I also appreciate games that do a great job of setting a tone and a mood right out of the gates as well. Games like Limbo that really, establish a world extremely well, even though they don't have a lot of action and excitement right out of the gates. And this isn't doing that either.
No. So I think I should articulate my view a little bit more. Limbo is excellent because it asks you all these intriguing questions in the first 30 minutes. Like, where the hell am I? Who the hell am I? Why is the world like this? Am I dead? Am I alive? Why is everyone in this limbo space, hostile to me? Like, you run up against those three people that seem like your friends, and then they try to lure you into the spike pit. That was a really cool moment.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you gotta have some intriguing, cool moments. It doesn't have to be big budget, high octane, Call of Duty, Titanfall, whatever.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is not doing everything it can to get its hooks in you in the first 30 minutes, and that's a shame because then people might not stick with it for the full 2-hour experience.
Yeah, who knows how long the game actually is. But I'm always a fan of shorter games that, each part of it is polished and awesome, rather than just artificially long.
Hello. That may be a flaw with the format of this podcast, by the way, is that, we're always going to be talking about the early experiences of games, which maybe is what makes the podcast interesting.
I think whether a game is worth sticking with is really a matter of, do you get hooked by it and intrigued, We're just trying to skim the vast multitudes of games on Steam and say, these are some games, we played a little bit of them, and we found them pretty damn intriguing, or we didn't.
Yep. This is interesting what's going on right here. I'm picking up houses.
So you're literally rearranging the environment. You're going to make a bridge out of houses. That's interesting. It's kind of very explicit that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's an early level. My friend just teleported.
Well, you're ashamed one of those houses will land on you.
Oh yeah, I wonder if I could do that. Let's see, if I keep walking backwards far enough. Hello?
I think...
no.
Sadly. Well, I just think I'm a fan of minimalist game design. Like Shadow of the Colossus is one of my favorite games of all time ever, and there's almost no ambient music, then there's basically just the sound of the wind and your horse galloping the whole time. But even Shadow of the Colossus has a really intriguing opening, where you're asking yourself, where the hell am I? Why am I fighting these beasts? What happened to my girlfriend? Why is she dead? Why are these guys from this religious church type thing after me? Am I the bad guy or the good guy? Comes up, the first 30 minutes of that game.
That's all in the first 30 minutes? Wow.
Yeah, you've got... And then the rest of the 14 minutes is very subtle and meditative, but the first 30 minutes, relative to the rest of the game, is quite action-packed.
Yeah.
And that first 30 minutes also establishes kind of the central conceit. Like, your girlfriend's dead, there's a mysterious entity that you've made a devil's bargain with, Whereas this, man, the exposition is none. You're in the closet and you're in this fantasy world solving puzzles. That's it.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but to play devil's advocate, is it a problem in our society or with us as gamers that we don't have the patience to see what this art piece, could offer us if we were to explore the world a little bit more?
Well, so it's kind of interesting. Like, I'm a bit of a commercialist, I'll agree. Like,
And so am I.
I feel like the obligation of a game designer is to take some responsibility that, the game that you make is approachable so that people can experience the message that you have that's quite valid.
I agree with you, and there are some excellent art piece games that are incredibly fun to play.
Yes. I mean, everything that game company ever made.
Right. Or games like Braid or Fez. So.
Yeah. And they're very subtle in their opening, each of those games. Like Journey, for example, it's not an action-packed opening, but it still establishes, hey, you're this mystical creature, you've got to get to that mountain, right? It's like it's own, and you've got a companion that's going to join you along the way. In its subtle way, it is asking some intriguing questions that you will try to resolve through the rest of the game experience.
I think what they're trying to do here is create like a childlike sense of play, so that they can sort of crash it all down once they introduce the main nemesis character.
What I would say is, like, if that's what you're doing, even if you don't want that monster to be around that much in the beginning of the game so you can establish it, you still very early on need to establish, like, childlike sense of play with the dread of this monster turning on you. Like, that mechanic, we haven't even seen it yet, right? And that's the core of the game.
Yep. Plus, the world is cool, but it's overstaying its welcome, and the puzzles aren't challenging enough, so...
Yeah, I feel like
I shouldn't say that.
We should be interacting with that monster and seeing him turn on you within the first 5 minutes. Just to establish what the game's all about.
How commercial.
It's commercial, but, that's the hook. That's what this game is trying to say.
You sell out.
I acknowledge that.
Oh, I think I'm gonna get screwed here because I didn't send my little fairy back. Oh! Well, okay, now what do I do? Here I was just complaining about the puzzles being too easy. Although I don't necessarily think that this is a complicated puzzle.
No, it's not.
One.
Braid, the puzzles weren't hard to execute mechanically, unless you're doing like the hidden stars or whatever. But they provided a tremendous amount of intellectual satisfaction when you figured them out.
I'm missing one more.
So if you're gonna have like a jumping puzzle like this, I mean, the game has to be really tuned and balanced. Mario is tuned within an inch of its life. You have to decide whether you're going to be more of an intellectual platformer or an action platformer.
You're not experiencing this, but the jump is actually pretty annoying as well. It's not a well-balanced, well-tuned jump. It's slow to accelerate, and you only move a small distance in front of you when you jump. It's very easy to fall.
I feel like there's some intrigue that you're trying to get to that friend of yours. So we have some ambient music kicking in now.
Yeah, it's an escalation. I think that's what's going on here. I keep missing these things. They're so obvious. Keep it going. Alright. I did a thing.
I mean, it's worth calling out. This world feels awfully lifeless.
It really does. I mean, it's cool to look at for a moment. Maybe even a few moments, but I'm bored already.
Yeah. I hate to say it. If our listeners are, cultured, sophisticated NPR viewers, they might be like, or listeners, they might be like, you have no attention span and you don't appreciate art, but I'm okay with that.
Well, I'd like to hear what specifically I'm not appreciating, like what I'm missing right now.
Just that, we're not giving games enough time.
I guess that's true. I mean, it is only a half-hour podcast, though. Maybe we shouldn't feature so many indie games on a half-an-hour podcast.
Well, I feel like we are the types that are going to enjoy all the mainstream games. We're going to play Skyrim, we're going to play Diablo Reaper Souls, we're going to play Call of Duty, and that's well-trodden ground. Like there are probably 50 to 100 reviews each of those games, right? But this is just the random stuff you pick up on Steam that we are taking kind of, if you're into mainstream games, our aesthetic opinion is likely to be pretty in sync with yours. And you might find some games here that you actually like or would like. And we're trying to save you some time.
Have we found any yet?
No, we haven't. We haven't found a single game that we would say, yeah, this is intriguing. Oh, no, I take it back. Frozen Synapse.
That's just for you. I wasn't that into that one. Maybe
I thought it
that's 'cause I
was
lost.
really intriguing. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Why is that? These games, they mean so much more. The idea, the fact that the games exist is more important than that the games are fun, you know what I mean? It's like I build it up in my head and I've wanted to play it for a year, but I've never taken the time to do it. And in some ways that's more powerful and better than the actual experience of finally playing
it.
it.
For 30 minutes and you're like, oh, this wasn't that intriguing.
Well, here we go. Real world sequence. I have limited control of the camera, but nothing else.
See, I think if you started the game on this scene, it might have been more intriguing, and I don't even know what's going to happen. But it's like really interesting. There's the boy, there's the dark, city street, it's kind of shady. There's the car just parked there.
Oh, I actually am controlling the boy, I didn't know.
It's asking some questions, like what's going on here?
Okay. Strange. So what do you think this game is lacking in? Is it in the gameplay, in the design of it, the narrative pacing? It seems like the art is actually pretty good, and the intent,
textures and art are good. Yeah, I agree. It's my primary complaint is that there is no real emphasis on pacing or story at all, and that they're trying to execute on a couple of mechanics and not doing any of them, exceptionally. There's like the monster helping you thing, and then there's the platformer thing, and then there's the puzzle plot solving thing. That's a lot of mechanics, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Any one of those can be a game in and of itself. But I think, I'll accept lackluster mechanics in the pursuit of a good story, but the story has to be there at least. Especially if it's an idea game like this, it's an indie game.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder, like, we know that there are AAA development houses that are capable of executing games like this at extremely high quality when you look at games like, Tomb Raider, for example, or Uncharted. Right. What if a game company like that had a smaller division where 15 people could take that skill set and combine it with this sort of really interesting art piece type game about an abusive drunk father? Well,
I'll tell you one thing. It's not about an abusive drunk father, but that scenario you described actually exists, and it's on Steam, and it's called Gone Home. Those are BioShock guys. They finished BioShock Infinite, and it was like a small team of 5-10, and that was their wind down project, and it is really interesting, and it explores very unconventional subject matter, but it also explored it in a kind of familiar way because it's very BioShock-esque, this ambient exploration style. So it draws you in with the familiar, and then it's it's interesting when you actually start digging into the plot. But that's what happens when you have AAA indie developers work on an indie game. People generally loved Gone Home. I loved Gone Home.
Well, yeah, this is interesting to me because it's like this is art and it's missing craft. You know what I mean?
Yes, man, you were good. I hate to say it, but the advice I would give to this developer is not be better at art. Because there's obviously like a really clear directorial vision and aesthetic like that a lot of games lack. A lot of games
it's got a strong creative director, obviously.
Yeah,
and an interesting idea at its core, and it's unique and innovative.
The advice would be, unfortunately, you gotta put in your time working on the mainstream stuff to really refine the craft portion.
Or spend more money. I mean, it could have been a resource constraint.
Sure.
But I don't actually think it is. I mean, just like the fact that the turning speed and the balance of the way that you jump is poorly tuned, like that is strictly speaking craft. That has nothing to do with the artistry of the game. Is the jump tuned well? But it just so happens that the jump is not tuned well here, and likewise the narrative pacing and other things like that. It's a shame, really. It's probably why it gets the 70 Metascore. It probably is deserving of a much lower Metascore without the artistry.
Much. And you and I have both done some stints in game usability, and that's something that a lot of big AAA developers do. They have people play very early on in game development, like the first level or a segment of gameplay, and give their feedback. I think they probably didn't, of course, have the resources for that. The only people playing this are friends and family who might be a little biased. But if they had actual gamers like us playing it, they'd get similar feedback to what we just said.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll have to read up more about the story behind these developers. I don't honestly know it, but that's my assumption.
One thing that would be cool, I know you just went to GDC, like, obviously we're not, big games journalists yet, Matt, but, I would love to talk to the guy who made a virus named Tom. I think you ran into him at GDC.
Yeah.
Maybe I was not the most charitable as game. I feel like there were obviously some issues with it, but like it is hard to make a game. So it'd be intriguing to hear their side of it.
It's not just hard to make a game; it's hard to leave your life behind to make a game, which is the commitment that it takes. So.
And then it's so easy for us or anyone in the critical media to just hold up any game to the golden standard of 90 Metacritic games. Like I'm always going to compare platforming mechanics to Mario, right? And I'm going to compare puzzle platforming mechanics to Braid, which is, to be fair, another indie game, right? But the best in class, because we've all played the best in class, so it's almost an impossible standard to live up to. Which is kind of why I always think that if you're gonna make an indie game, you gotta keep the focus as tight as possible.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure that I'm gonna be playing very much more of this right now, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, I don't think I will. I don't actually own it, but I'm not gonna pick it up simply because there's just not enough narrative intrigue. I could definitely deal with mediocre platforming. I've played a lot of games with mediocre platforming.
Here he is. Is he walking above us, I suppose? Well, let's play for another moment, just see if we get this grand introduction.
I mean, he's coming in at the 30-minute mark, so that is a little bit late in the game.
So there are all these great resources for indie developers to get funding and to get started and to get mentorship and stuff like that. Has anybody ever set up a resource where an indie developer can just get connected with, a very experienced commercial gameplay designer who can tell you things about the importance of the first 30 minutes or, I don't know, how to tune your jumping and balance or, the craft type stuff that this game is missing? Or does that go against being indie?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of indie developers are like, the reason I make games is so I don't have to deal with that crap, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crap associated with mainstream game development. for sure. Like most games are devoid of any artistic merit whatsoever, fun as they may be to play. Um, but yeah, I think if such a pairing was to exist and somehow, there was a bond of mutual trust, it would be better for both sides. We'd learn a little bit about art, they'd learn a little bit about craft, and the games would be better, most importantly.
Yeah. I wonder if that ever, maybe that's how we get these great AAA games that really make you think, like Bioshock Infinite. Maybe they hire some people who have this type of experience. Certainly the guys at Valve have a track record of hiring people who've done independent work who don't come from the big studios.
Well, yeah, and your motivations have to be pure. Because for the AAA guys, if the motivation, especially from the executive level, when they're approving headcount and hires, is like, how is this contributing to the bottom line? Like every hire is going to be evaluated on, in the end, are you net positive to the revenue of this company? So you have to sort of make the argument, or someone has to make the argument that it's good if just indie games up their craft. It's good for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good stopping point for this game. Yeah, I'm gonna exit out.
Yeah, I feel like I feel sad.
Yeah, me too.
And not because of the game, because of the. I mean, look, there are some amazing indie games that have really broken out. FTL. I've played, hundreds of hours of. It is incredible. Perhaps I'm exaggerating. I have played close to 100 hours of it. So, but that's an example where they didn't go for art, they didn't go for production values, they just went for pure, unadulterated, good gameplay. And the indie games that break out tend to be the ones that have amazing gameplay. Like, forget about the production values, forget about the artistic merit. And the indie games that don't break out, that fade away in seconds, are games like Papo and Yo, where it's like, wow, this is really interesting and kind of artistic, has an artistic merit. But the gameplay is really mediocre, so it's almost like they could have told it just as well in an animated medium. Just use their game engine to put together a 30-minute cutscene.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I also think that what you're hitting on, it's partly that, but it's also partly focus, Like, just do one thing and do it incredibly well. Focus on gameplay. Make the gameplay support the story.
It's funny, I love the user-generated tags, because they really do tend to nail it. Indie puzzle platformer art.
Yeah.
Adventure, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I associate that with more, traversing, like dialogue or traversing, vast worlds.
Well, I haven't finished the game. I'm probably not going to finish the game, but based on that first experience, I understand the Metascore.
I think 70's high.
Well, we haven't played it through all the way, but yeah. So how are we going to choose what we play next?
Oh man, I feel like we have we gotta get a win. I feel like we gotta get a win.
All right. Well, what's exciting to you?
I see a couple that seem really interesting, like gratuitous space battles. I've heard people say it's just such a guilty pleasure, and then Guacamelee, I've heard amazing things about too.
Oh, Guacamelee sounds good. I'm actually interested in Guacamelee.
Yeah,
I
let's
saw
do
a couple
Guacamelee.
of GDC talks that these guys gave. Two, actually. One about how to do marketing and PR as a nobody, which was pretty interesting. And the other was the post-mortem of this game. So I haven't played it myself, but I think it'd make for good discussion. So
I love how we're totally tossing the randomization. But, let's just talk about that for a quick second. The randomization thing, it was based on a false assumption, which is we're going to randomize and we're going to hit upon garbage some percentage of the time, and then cool stuff some equal percentage of the time. And okay, garbage is strong, but we're playing a lot of games where we're just coming to the conclusion where it's like, it was all right. I don't know. So going off of our gut a little bit more than using a randomization algorithm seems like a good tactic, at least for the next couple.
Yep. I agree, and I've also sort of pre-selected, so a lot of the random freebies are out of here now, and these 100 that are sitting in this queue installed on my computer already are all ones that are sort of
You
pre-screened.
cheater. No, yeah, they all seem pretty interesting.
So, okay, cool. Well, join us next week for Guacamole, and thanks for checking out Papo and Yo.
Thanks, guys.